up to be abducted.
Yeah, and that's what that is.
If you've got the right tag and you're supposed to be, you know.
That's what Greer is most interested in, is the fact that you can make this connection between the military
I can make it real clear, because the sergeant, my platoon sergeant, who I had to report to that night after this was over with, told me point blank. He said, "Ritter, look, I've seen these things out here." He said, "Or you'll go to the psycho ward."
Yeah.
So I said, well, so be it, then I'll be going to the psycho ward, because you're putting this on record, right?
I'm rolling. So anytime.
Let's do his name, just this is in case we ever lose the
right.
the box or something. I don't know. Right place?
Yep, George Ritter. Got it.
So, why don't you start, George, by, if you could just make a statement as to, and it doesn't have to be a lot of detail, but a statement as to what your, the experiences that you have had prior to when you got to Hunter Liggett, just sort of a sweep of your childhood and your years prior to going into the military. Establish the fact that you had a prior connection to the UFO phenomena and what that was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we
That's
do this,
okay.
You somehow got moved a little bit that way.
Okay.
I wanted to
Put
move
me
you
wherever you
because
want.
you'll be looking at her, so this way it'll be close to
Okay.
the camera.
And I have to
without
be sure
looking
this
right at-
chair, this chair's solid.
All right.
Okay.
So that's better. Thanks.
So if you want to just sort of state what you're...
Okay, when I was 5 years old was the first time I had ever seen anything like this. And it was your typical UFO, cigar-shaped UFO, and it was silver-colored. It did have some black, like, scorch marks on it. And that's all I remembered that day. I was on the creek throwing rocks, and something just, I felt like I should turn around and look up, and I did, and that's what I saw. Nothing else happened until Hunter Liggett. But then later on down the road, I was hypnotically regressed by several different people and found out that it's been going on throughout my whole lifetime.
Okay. Let's back up to, why don't you tell us what your military experience was, your training, and what your any specialties you had within the military, or just what your experience in the military was prior to your arrival at Hunter Liggett.
I was light weapons infantry expert. I was a automatic rifleman, first class machine gunner, and grenadier. And that encompasses anything in the light weapons arsenal that you can carry. And that's what I was trained to do and did.
And if you could stay out the years, starting, make a full sentence, when you were there in the military, what years it was?
I was drafted in 1966 and took my training at Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training, for advanced infantry training and jungle warfare. I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana. From there, I went straight to Vietnam, served with the 1st of the 10th Cav and 4th Infantry Division in the highlands of Pleiku area. Our job was recon, and after that was over, we came back to California. That's my next duty station, and that's when I was assigned to CDEC, Combat Development Experimental Command, which I had no idea what that meant at the time, but I was soon to find out, because it was in the week of October 24th, 1967, that myself and 3 of my friends that were on guard with me observed a strange light in the sky that was moving left to right. It got a lot bigger and brighter and left off an orange fluorescent trail.
Let me stop you just for one quick second. Is that
I didn't know where it was coming from. I can hear it.
If you can hear it, it's
What is it?
Isn't that a problem?
Well, I don't...
I mean, I noticed...
I can hear it with my ear. Well...
I think I know what it is. It's my water cooler. I'll go unplug it.
We did.
Remind me to get all this stuff back.
No, it's not your fault.
It's hard to tell whether it's going to go down.
Are we rolling?
We're now rolling.
Okay, if you could just redo the question about your military training, where you served, and
Okay.
everything went on prior to Hunter Liggett.
I was drafted in 1966, and I took my basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and from there I went on to Fort Polk, Louisiana for my advanced infantry and jungle warfare training. I was then assigned to the 1st of the 10th Cavalry, 4th Infantry Division in the Pleiku area of the mountains of the Central Highlands, and that's where we were recon. That's where we spent our time there, right on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And then after I got out of there, I came back home, had to leave, and was reassigned to Fort Ord, California. So when I got there, I was told that I was at an experimental command called Combat Development Experimental Command. And on Monday mornings, they'd get us up like at 4 o'clock in the morning and have us on buses and bus us a couple hours out into the desert somewhere to this place called Hunter Liggett Military Reservation, which was just past Camp Roberts, which I just found out recently was in the El Diablo Range, Canyon Range, and was not in the Mojave Desert, as I was told where I was when I was there. So I've also spoken to Mr. Milford Grinstaff, and he assured me that other people had been told that they were places that they weren't. So things were just a little, that just didn't seem right to me when I was there, that a normal military operation would carry on this way. Finally, when we started our experiments, they would take us out into the mountains, bus us out there in cattle trucks, and get us online with our M16 rifles with live ammo, and we were supposed to fire back at propane simulators that fired at us from the hills to see how close we could get for a score or a hit. That's what I was told. One night when me and my 3 friends didn't have any guard duty or experiments, we guard duty, and it was like I looked at a clock on a building. It was about 2 minutes before 11 at night, and that's when I noticed. When I turned back around, I saw this orange object in the sky, which was way far away. So I said, "Look at that, you guys! What the heck is that?" So we watched it, and it moved from left to right, and then it got bigger and brighter, a lot brighter. And it started leaving off an orange fluorescent trail. While it was doing this, leaving off the trail, 5 little objects dropped out of the bottom of the main object. After they dropped out of there, the main object went back to its normal size and shape, and the fluorescent trail stopped right when it went back to the normal size. Whether that was from having a door of some kind open and that was the light that came out, but I don't know why it would leave a fluorescent trail, because after the whole thing was over, I noticed there was still a glowing cloud in the sky after this was over with. And we were watching this thing, and we watched the 5 little ones, and they got in a V formation, and they had to be miles away from us, but they were on top of us in no time. And just before they got to us, they might have been a quarter of a mile away, I could hear this echoing blip, kind of a sound like water dripping into a pool of water with echoes, like a poing sound, only it was like an electronic sound. And I'm convinced to this day that that was the start of the abduction, because none of us could move anything at that time except our eyes, because our heads were like this. These things were right over top of us. So the next thing I know, I'm flat on my back. I don't have any clothes on. I'm on a table of sorts, of some kind. I don't know what kind of a table it was. And this gray being bent over the table and put his brow right up, touched to mine. And I was there staring in this being's eyes. And the way it made me feel was like everything I had ever known or learned, any experience I had, any lesson I'd been taught, that he then knew all about it too. They call it a mind meld, I think is what it's called. Sergeant Clifford Stone put it better when he called it interfacing, because he related to me what his experience was with interfacing, and mine was different. I didn't get a loud buzzing noise or anything like that. It just felt like all the knowledge I had been drawn out through my eyes. And then this person, this being, knew everything I knew. It was a pretty strange situation. So there was 3 of them working on me.
Oh my gosh, the dogs.
Okay.
Disrupt you.
That's okay.
Just, you ready? Just pick up.
There were 3 of them working on me, and they seemed to be interested in my feet. I couldn't figure out why they were interested in my feet, unless it was because they were so calloused, you know. And they got down in between my toes and did stuff like that. And then one moved up the table to my right thigh, and he gave me, I couldn't see him give me an injection, but I knew what an injection felt like, and it was an injection. And then they did something into my groin area. I don't know what they did. I just, you know, I didn't like them fooling around like that. I didn't like being there. I didn't want to be there anyway. So later, one of them came up to my left side, and it felt like in my chest, in my left chest area here, that he stuck his whole hand inside my chest cavity and did something and then withdrew. I don't know. I thought at the time it's impossible. He couldn't have done that. But maybe he could have. I don't know. So then when they were all done with the experiment, I was dressed. I don't know how they got me undressed or dressed so fast. I got my boots off because they were laced up tight and tied tight. But they led me into a different room where there was this, I got to say it was a being, because it didn't have a form of a human or anything that it was just a light form, a light source, like a big ball of goldish white, brilliant light that was just, it emanated so much love. I've never been in the presence of anything like that before or since in my lifetime, that just the love and I just thought it had to be an angel. So that's what I've called it all these years. I didn't know what else to call it. I didn't know about light beings back then. I thought it was an angel. So before they let me go, they told me, oh, while I was on the table, they did put something in my mouth that had a bittersweet taste to it, and it left a metallic taste in my mouth. And I got a long needle shoved up the left side of my left nostril, a real long needle. It didn't really hurt. It was a little annoying, but it didn't hurt. And then that's when they led me to the room, and I encountered this being, and I was reminded that I had to keep my end of the arrangement, my end of the bargain. Something that evidently they wanted me to either feel like I had cut a deal with them at some prior time, or I did cut a deal with them at some time in the past. But they were reminding me that I had to keep my end of the arrangement. So we got back on the ground. We were standing there, and I was still looking up like I was when they got there, but they were gone, and I couldn't figure out where they went because they were nowhere around, and I was looking all around. So I told the other 3 guys, I said, we got to go over and tell Sergeant Palmer, our platoon sergeant, about this, because we just witnessed something that's not right, you know, something is wrong here. So we went over there, and I guess I had to be the spokesman, because as soon as he threatened me with the psycho ward, if I didn't keep my mouth shut, then they wouldn't talk at all. So after being threatened with the psycho ward and being told by Sergeant Palmer that he himself had seen these things and other people out there had seen these things, his best advice to me was to keep my mouth shut. And that's when I reminded him that I'd taken an oath when I came in the Army. I was on guard duty and had to follow my general orders, which are, while on guard duty, to report any and everything strange and unusual. And this fit the bill, the strangest and unusual thing I've ever seen in my life. But he told me if I insisted upon him putting this on the report, that I would go to the psycho ward for not keeping my mouth shut. So I said, so be it. But put it on record now, right now, in front of me while I'm standing here. And he did. And I went to the psycho ward.
What about the three men that you described that were there when you were taken and they were there when you came back? Can you say more about where they were, what you saw them doing when you left, what you saw them doing when you came back, and what they told you they had experienced during the time when you were in the craft?
The three gentlemen that were with me the night this happened were named, one of them, I only knew one's first name, Eddie Garcia. The other man's name was Fenty, and the other man's name was Willis. Garcia, of course, is Mexican, and Willis and Fenty were both black. I don't know where Willis was from, but Fenty was from the West Indies. And it was like, if we didn't bring the situation up, they couldn't remember anything at all. And I didn't sleep that night, or for a week I could not sleep. And these guys, they went to bed when they woke up. To them, nothing happened until I reminded them. I'd bring it up. Start, do you remember what happened last night? Oh, yeah, I do remember that. And then they'd just, if I didn't keep talking, they'd forget it and never bring it up again. But I know Garcia knew because he came to the psycho ward and asked me, why don't I just let it go? And I said, I can't just let it go.
What did they know? Did they actually just see the craft from the outside, or were any of them taken aboard?
No, I don't think any of them were taken aboard because I didn't see them while I was on whichever one I was on, and they never let on like they went anywhere, or if they did, they just didn't remember because after they went to sleep, they couldn't remember anything. It's a weird situation. It's still a strange thing, even now, but I realize now I've accepted the fact that I am an abductee, and I'm going to be abducted till the day I die, more than likely. So I just quit swimming against the tide. I started to go with the flow and accept it, and I'm a much happier person. I may not be after this interview, but right now I'm a happy camper.
Can you describe what it was like in the psycho ward and what they actually did to you and how long you were there?
Right away, when I got there, they started me in on Thorazine, and they gave me like 300 milligrams 3 or 4 times a day. And I just didn't think they made drugs like that. After a few days, none of us could hardly even walk that were on it. I mean, you could just barely pick your feet up. We called it the Thorazine shuffle back then because you couldn't think straight, you couldn't hardly walk, you just had to move real slow. And in the psycho ward, when they found out what I was in there for, other people related stories to me. One kid said his mother was out there to visit him and had seen a UFO come up out of a reservoir and take off. So, maybe standard operating procedure for the military is if anyone reports one of these things, to put them in the psycho ward, which is where I hope a lot of these military personnel end up when this is over, because I'm going to be right there to pull the trip on the lever that hangs them all.
What kind of things were going on at Hunter Liggett at the time? I mean, this took place outside of the Hunter Liggett facility, right?
No.
Oh, where exactly did it? And start, don't...
Right at Hunter Liggett. It took place right at Hunter Liggett right across the street from the orderly room where Sergeant Palmer was, and we had walked our areas and met back at that area to decide how we wanted to break up the rest of the night so we didn't have to look at the same thing all night. And how no one else saw what took place on a military reservation at 11 o'clock at night is beyond me. How no one else saw that. Or everyone had been intimidated to the point which the military, especially their lower-ranking officers, are very good and specially trained on how to intimidate people. But it just doesn't work with some people. The people like that went to Vietnam, especially a lot of young lieutenants that thought they were hardcore and couldn't listen to reason, didn't come home. And it was because their own men killed them. Yeah.
What was going on at Hunter Liggett back then? What was the facility used for?
It was, back then it was used mainly, I thought, for doing these night infantry warfare techniques and trying to figure out how you could score at night. And I never could figure out why they wanted us to wear gas masks at Hunter Liggett at night and try to look through the sights on a rifle. You can't do it. It's impossible. Unless they were testing gases on us. And I've been told they were. They also had a gas made from LSD called acid gas, which was never used on me, but one night after this incident happened, someone did put LSD in my beer, and I didn't know it till later, and happened to mention to Garcia that the ping pong ball looked funny going back and forth across the net. It looked like a green tracer with a lot of trails behind it. And he said, somebody put acid in your beer. And I said, well, that's nice. You know, I didn't, it didn't have any bad effects on me. Like I couldn't sleep for about 24 hours. But, you know, why would they do that? Especially to somebody who just got done going to the orderly room and telling the truth about a situation that just happened. Evidently, the military's got an agenda that does not include the truth. The higher-ups in the military think they're gods who can manhandle and manipulate the peons on the other end. Well, I don't think it's going to stay that way for a whole lot longer. Things are going to change. And it's not going to be me that changes anything, but it's going to be a multitude of people that will change something. And when these people are brought to justice, I want to be there. I want to be in on a class action lawsuit against these people for making a deal in 1953 to get technology in order to be able for them to abduct our citizens. It's ludicrous. It's beyond belief. We could have had free energy. We could have had it with Tesla, and look what they did to him. Eisenhower couldn't accept free energy, though. They would have killed him because there would have went all the fossil fuel money, which there's been alternatives for fossil fuels probably for decades, and there's too much money in the fossil fuel industry. It's just like the military smuggling dope into this country. They smuggle heroin into this country from Southeast Asia. They smuggle cocaine on C-5A transport planes into the country from South America. And who knows what goodies we give them, the government gives them, so they can sell the dope and get the money for their black projects. And then go bust the people they sell the dope to, steal the dope back and the money, and redo it again. So they've got more money for their black operations. The military, as far as I'm concerned, is down to the dregs when they have to lie to the American public, when they send boys to war to die, and then when they come home and they made it, they try to kill them with experimentation. It's sick. It's real sick, and I hope the sick people that are responsible, I hope you all hang. That's what I hope. I want to be there to see it.
Can we go back to Hunter Liggett for a moment? Is there anything you can state about whether there were any physical effects from the abduction that you described, and whether anybody in the psych ward or the psycho ward or anyone else may have seen any physical markings on your body from the needles or any stuff that happened to you?
After the abduction was over, and I saw how I was being treated from my own platoon sergeant for upholding my orders, my general orders and my oath, I was just basically told to ignore the oath, ignore the general orders, shut up about this, or you'll get in trouble. That was basically what I was told. But after I was turned loose, all the skin on my body, that's one day from my waist down, it all just like flaked off. I couldn't, going like this, I couldn't understand. The next day, the top half flaked off. And then we went back for a weekend one time, and the whole heel portion of my foot, the callus, real thick skin heel part, the whole thing came off. And then later on, the other one did. And I don't know what caused that either. I did have an itch and a rash in my groin area. I imagine it was from what everyone knows they do. I don't know if they scrub you or something or what they do, but it did leave me with a rash and an itch. And when they stuck the needle up my nose, I could hear it, like pop and crack, but it didn't really hurt. I don't know if it was because I was already sedated from the shot I got in the leg or whatever they put in my mouth. Maybe something to make me forget. I don't know. But other than that, I just, there's a lot of things I don't recall about the abduction, but there's a whole lot of things I do recall. And how a lifer in the military told me to keep my mouth shut and ignore my orders.
Do you know where that Sergeant Palmer?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know his first name, and can you state his full name and state anything about where he is now or whether you've tried to find him?
I have no idea where he is, and I've tried to find the other 3 people that were with me, and I can't find him anywhere.
Can you make a statement? I know that you do not believe that there was any drug inducement that took place, that might have made you think you were being abducted when you weren't. Can you just make a statement that establishes the fact that, as to your being convinced that this was a real physical experience as opposed to some drug-induced experience?
Okay. The reason I know that this wasn't a drug-induced experience or anything like an out-of-body experience or anything like this is because I was fully awake and conscious and in my body. And when they did things to me, it hurt a little bit, not bad. I think the drugging started after the abduction took place, for them to try to make me look even crazier than what I already looked for telling the truth. They probably thought I was insane for telling the truth because it was going to screw up their bag of candy. There's chemical weapons buried all over that place. There's hallucinogenic weapons buried all over that place. There's any number of horrific things that have gone on out there that I found out since I was there. And I'm glad I didn't know about it there. But, I've tried to tell the truth about this to anybody who would listen, and it's fallen on a lot of deaf ears up until now and up until just recently and a few years ago. More people are seeing these things. More people are having experiences. More people are starting to think, well, maybe these people aren't crazy. Well, I'm not crazy, and I still see them. I've photographed 2,000 of them right out back here already, over 2,000. Oh, that's not crazy. That's hard facts.
Can Can you talk about the military's role? I mean, the fact that this took place outside of the military base, can you make a connection between the military being conscious or even playing some kind of a, conscious of this abduction, conscious of UFOs coming there, or maybe even playing some role in some way in allowing this to happen or being aware of what was going on? Can you just make that connection?
I can say that my executive officer, which was Lieutenant Hammond, I never knew his first name because you don't address officers that way. He believed me because he came out there to talk to me, and I showed him where it happened. Psycho ward, he made a special trip to come to the back door of the ward to see me and talk to me and tell me that he and 3 other officers had chased strange lights all over the desert for 3 nights in a row. They would see them on the other side of a rise, get up on top of that rise, and they weren't there, but they were in the next one. So they'd go to the next one, and it just kept jumping like on them. They never did catch up with him, he said. But he believed me, and if Lieutenant Hammond is out there anywhere, I hope he'll come forward.
And what he believed was the whole story of your abduction?
Mm-hmm. He believed everything I told him about what happened because he could see what was happening to me.
The other man who told you to be quiet, what was his name again? Palmer?
Mm-hmm.
Was Palmer on the base at the time that it happened? I mean, well, let me just see what I'm trying to say here. You and your 3 friends were outside, right, when this happened?
Yes.
Do you have any sense that anybody else besides those other 3 people were likely to have seen the UFO? I mean, is it possible that the rest of the base, I know you commented on it before, but can you make a statement as to how unlikely it might have been, if this is indeed true, that other people on the base did not see these objects coming in, or that they didn't have any kind of detection or anything?
I still think it's a ludicrous idea to think that anybody didn't see him, that somebody else had to see him. Radar had to pick him up. But once again, Hunter Liggett is out in the middle of nowhere, and things come and go there. They used to come straight from Area 51 to Hunter Liggett. There's a drug cartel going on with the aliens and the military. The military tells the aliens what kind of drug they want to have a certain effect on a certain person, and then they get it. And that's what they do with their drugs. The drugs they get from the other countries, they just outright steal, and sell back to get their money for their black ops programs. There was a Marine major who probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe even farther back than that, was shotgunned to death in his shower because that very morning he was going to go and blow the whistle on the illegal cocaine traffic coming into this country from South America aboard huge Air Force cargo planes. Something's wrong here. This song is not in tune. How did our military come to this position? It doesn't make any sense to me at all. And if I had children that were military age and anything started happening, I'd tell them to go where they can't get you, boys. Don't ever go into the military. Don't ever give them the satisfaction of having another guinea pig. Don't go. Mm-hmm. I'll say that to anybody, right to their face. It may be patriotic in some people's eyes, but it's not very patriotic when you take a patriotic person and use them, a lot of them, to death. Mm-hmm. And then when they do make it out of the rainstorm or the firestorm, whatever you want to call it, and come back, they experiment on them and denounce them when they tell the truth. It's a sad situation. Very sad.
What was happening on the base during the 3 hours? You were in the craft for about 3 hours, right? did you ever learn what was going on in the base or what was going on with the 3 people that you left behind during that? That's a long period of time for you to have been gone. Did anybody make a comment about the fact that you were missing, or if you could just make a statement as to what you know about what might have happened during those 3 hours?
Okay. I did not see the other 3 men for the entire 3 hours that they had me. They seemed to be just like left right there in place. And when I got turned loose and got my wits back about me, I was still, or I don't know if I was still standing there or put back in place or something, because they were gone, and I said, where'd those things go? And nobody knew, even though we were all standing there looking up. There's too many unanswered phenomena for that place out there, and I know other people who have been to that area. If you come across him, like Melford, he'll tell you. There's another man out toward Oregon, or in Oregon too, that'll tell you the same thing. He grew up there as a child, and him and his father watched UFOs. And then later on, as a young soldier, he was assigned to Hunter Liggett and watched it all over again. If I can, I'm trying to get him to come forward, and if he will, I'll relay the message that he wants to be talked to. But the way it looks from this end, Hunter Liggett was nothing but a proving ground to see what someone could take. So to this day, I think that Hunter Liggett Military Reservation is, and probably still, an abduction terminal for the U.S. military.
Is and probably still was?
It was.
It was and probably still is. Can you just restate that statement?
Okay, I think that Hunter Liggett Military Reservation was, at the time I was taken, and still is, an abduction terminal for unsuspecting soldiers who, most of them, never ever have a clue that anything's happened because they don't remember. They're wiped clean or something. The people on the craft, the beings, told me before I left him. First I asked them if I'd ever see him again, and they said yes. And I forgot what I was going to...
About memory?
Yeah, they told me that I wouldn't remember any of this. And I said, oh, yes, I will. I'll remember everything that just happened. Well, of course, I didn't remember it all to know that it happened.
Can you say more about it being an abduction terminal, to say what you mean by abduction terminal, and what leads you to believe that that's what it is?
Well, it seems like at Hunter Liggett Military Reservation, they just do whatever they damn well please. So wouldn't that be a good place to set soldiers up to be abducted? I would call it a terminal just like any other terminal, where you take unsuspecting people that volunteer for the military, and then you use them that way. That's not right. Somebody's going to have to pay this time.
Have you heard from any other people, or do you know of any other individuals that have said that they were also abducted, or do you, that actually remember it
Yes.
at the facility there,
Yes.
other than yourself?
Yes.
Can you make a statement?
I've talked to 2 other soldiers that were stationed at Hunter Liggett, one 5 years after I was, and one maybe a little more than that after I was, that were both abducted. Were both in on shenanigans that went on out there, but they didn't have much choice than to do what they were told because they were being ordered to do things. One of these men will come forward. The other one I'm still working on, so let's just hope for the best on that one. We need anybody that's ever had anything strange at Hunter Liggett to come forward, because I know there's a lot of them. Most of them have been scared or intimidated, or like when I made my report, all of us only had a few months to go into service, and those guys did not want to mess up and upset someone, do the right thing and tell the truth, because they might have held them in service longer. And that's how they intimidate you. And they also give you drugs and try to make you think you're crazy.
Yeah, can you narrate a little more about when you were in the psycho ward, if you could say how long you were there, what they did to you there, and then what happened after you got out?
Okay, like, I was in the psycho ward for 2 months, and pretty well had them believing that I saw something, but I wasn't sure what I saw, because I wanted to get out of there. And I went back to duty, and I started snooping around again out there, and mentioned the fact that they were covering something up, because before my abduction, my company was A Company, 41st Infantry, C Deck. Right after the abduction, and I made my report, my company was changed to G Company, 41st Infantry, C Deck. Why? Cover up. They could bury it that way. They never had an A Company. There was never a Ritter here. They do these things, you know. They do.
In the months that followed your release from psycho ward, and can you state what you were doing and how long you actually remained there after that?
Out in the desert?
At Hunter Lake.
Oh.
And after that, how long you were in the military following release?
I went out there and looked around and kept trying to come up with something, you know, and accused him of covering something up. And that's when I got sent back to the psycho ward, I think for or 2 maybe. And I only had 2 more months to go to get out. So they put me in a medical holding company because they knew I wasn't crazy. You know, I wasn't acting like a crazy person. I was trying to tell the truth, that's all. But that's crazy in the military, believe it or not. You try to tell the truth, you're going to get burnt. Seems like it's that way in all society anymore. Nobody wants to hear the truth. And when you tell the truth, you become an obstacle for someone. You become underhanded or dirty dealing or something for telling the truth. That's not the way this society is supposed to work. You know.
When you were in the psycho ward, you implied before, did they come in and keep checking on the story that you were telling to see if, maybe you can describe that process, to see if you were starting to forget or if you were willing to take it back, or how did they monitor your process during those 2 months to see when they thought you were sufficiently drugged that you were not going to, you know, that you were safe to release because they thought maybe you weren't going to talk about it anymore?
Well, that was their mistake.
Describe the process by which they were trying to convince themselves that you were going to be quiet or you were too...
Okay, they were trying to convince themselves and excuse themselves for letting me go back to duty by saying, well, he saw something, but we don't know what he saw. And I let it go at that because I wanted out of there. When I went back to the desert from the psycho ward from the first time, they sent the CID out there to check on me. That's the Criminal Investigation Division. I didn't do anything criminal. I didn't do anything criminal. I don't know why they did that.
Describe what the CID did when
I saw him talking to my sergeant. The CID man came out there and he had a little badge on, you know, like a cop. And all he had was a clipboard and a pencil. And he was talking to my sergeant, and they kept looking at me, and he was writing stuff down. And that was it. He left. But then when I said, you guys are covering something up, they decided to get me out of there again.
Since you were discharged, have you, or again, I don't want you to answer it yes or no, but if you can state as to whether you've received any kind of threats or harassment or anything that would imply that since you got out of the Army, they've been monitoring you or trying to keep you quiet.
I would say that they probably monitored me real close for a while after I got out, because they retained me in the service for 5 months and 24 days, and it says on my discharge, for the convenience of the government. So they didn't want me to return to work right away for some reason. I lost it again. Where were we?
Well, we were talking about any kind of harassment or.
Oh yeah, I told you
over
about
the years.
my. As far as harassment goes, I've had people come on in between a conversation between me and another person, and say crazy things. How they got on there, I don't know. I've had 2 gray Ford cars or silver with Maryland government license plates, which is probably the NSA, parked in front of my apartment and listening to what was going on in my apartment. A friend of mine challenged them, and then they left. And I never saw those 2 again. It's hard telling who they watch or why they watch them. Maybe they don't watch some people. Maybe they don't think there's any sense in it. But if they're going to spend all that time to watch them, then they're probably killing people too that they're worried about. We know they do, like the Marine major who was going to blow the whistle on the drug deals. They will stop at nothing to keep their secrets and their little black projects.
You could state as to whether you have any idea as to what the purpose of the abduction was that took place there, and also whether you think the military, or why you think the military would be keeping this secret. Why is it so important to them? Let's do that one. Let's do them separately.
That's easy. That's technology.
Yeah. Do you want to just make a statement as to why you believe, that it's important to the military that it be kept secret?
I don't know why it's important to keep it a secret. The military seems to think that the common man on the street's going to freak out if he finds out their flying saucers are real. I was 5 years old when I saw my first one. I didn't freak out. I freaked out when people wouldn't believe me when I told them. It just kind of soured me, and I never said another word about it until I was taken from Hunter Liggett. The military, they want to keep it hush-hush because of the technology involved that they're getting from out of their end of this bargain with the aliens, and it's hard telling what that technology can do. They can shine a laser beam on your window from an airplane at 30,000 feet and hear every word that's going on in your house. It works like a big speaker. It's, why do they need this kind of equipment and these kind of things to spy on the people that actually go out and fight their fights for them? It's underhanded, dirty dealing. It's like I say, I hope they all hang. I hope they hang.
Do you have any idea during that abduction what the purpose of that abduction was, or what was going on in terms of what they were trying to learn about you? Or
I think the only reason for my abduction at that time was an examination, like a checkup, like most abductees get from time to time. And they do different things to them. But why it had to be done there, I don't know. It would have been much easier in Vietnam. I wouldn't have been able to tell anybody. I wouldn't have believed it in Vietnam. But then again, people saw him over there too. The Marines fired at him. Fired at him up on the DMZ. I don't know. The military gets technology out of this that puts them so far ahead. They're probably 100 to 200 years ahead with their little toys and black ops projects. All basically to keep the big bucks rolling in to the United States and be top dog and eventually take over the whole world so nobody will have any freedom, including American citizens. I mean, how much freedom have we got now? That's what, like Janis Joplin said, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And that's right, because we don't have the freedoms we used to have. Nobody does. As far as retribution goes, if they want to come here, let them. That's fine. Doesn't bother me a bit. I still remember how to shoot.
Could you describe we'll just sort of shift gears a little bit and describe the project you have with the photographs. Just describe what you've been doing and what you've been able to capture on. And I think we've probably covered I don't know if you can think of any major
Do you want
questions.
to mention the that cigarette that was given to
Oh, yeah,
you
that's
after
true.
by the officer?
Okay, yeah.
Good memory.
Remember reading
Yeah,
that?
he
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because that's very important. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, let's just sort of, why don't you start describing that? Start with when in the chronology that happened.
Okay.
And be able to put that, and then, because that also sort of suggests that if they were able to induce the same state you felt in you can explain that that's what it was, and then describe what you think was going on there with that.
Okay. When they first brought me back, or I caught a bus back to Fort Ord from Hunter Liggett, I had to report to the company commander, or the first sergeant, they told me. And when I got in to talk to the first sergeant, he started running off about military justice. And I said, I haven't done anything wrong. And besides, what do you know about military justice? So he got on the box and sent me into the seat of lieutenant, who was a commander at the time. And the lieutenant asked me how I was, shook hands, very polite, nice, asked me if I wanted a cigarette. And I had my own cigarettes, and before I could say anything, he had his pack out like that. And I pulled the cigarette out, and just before I put it in my mouth, I could see that there was like a brown dot right about in the center of that, where that indentation would be, or there was like something liquid maybe had been just put in there, and maybe ran down a ways inside, but it didn't spread out on the filter. And I lit that cigarette and inhaled it, and I felt really euphoric. I mean, really good. I mean, just something like whatever they gave me on the ship. It made me a lot more at ease, because I was pretty uptight. I was seeing a company commander over this deal and trying to tell the truth. And after I smoked a little bit of the cigarette, he asked me, do you think you need to go to the hospital? And I said, no, I don't think I need to go to the hospital. But if you tell me you want me to go to the hospital, I'll go. And he said, well, then I think you should go, and for observation. And I said, fine, I'll go. And I went. And then that's when they started in with the Thorazine. It seems like the military is the biggest one to go around harping on drug use among its troops, when they drug them worse than any one person could imagine drugging themselves. The military uses drugs on their soldiers. They intimidate them, they lie to them, they abuse them, and they get them murdered.
Can you explain the fact that the feeling you had from the cigarette was the same as the feeling you had on the ship? How could it be that those two things were connected?
I don't know how the cigarette, the high I got from that, whatever was in the filter of that cigarette, could make me feel like whatever it was they gave me on that craft. But it seemed pretty much to be the same type of a real euphoric high. You couldn't even compare it to a marijuana high. A marijuana high kind of gets you down a little bit. This stuff made me feel just like, oh, I'm ready to go, It was a euphoric, but not a down of any kind. It was more like, it was very pleasurable, I'll tell you the truth, both times. So, I don't know. They know something. They're getting their little articles from somewhere. And in turn, people keep getting abducted and mutilated. Cattle get mutilated. People get mutilated. A lot of people don't understand that people have been mutilated. In 1968, in the jungles of Laos, a B-52 bomber was found in the jungle, dense jungle. not crashed, not crumpled up, just set down in the jungle. And when they entered it, they found the whole crew, the entire crew, had been mutilated and cored out, just like cattle.
Is there documentation on that incident? How were you informed of that?
Brad Steiger's book, The Rainbow Conspiracy. It's in the book. Oh yeah, they've done it to humans. Why they would do that to humans if they, why would they abduct people and even do surgery on them? I tried to get these X-rays back here to the house for you for today, but I can't get them back till Monday. And if you want me to, I'll send you a copy of the X-ray. But before I had this major surgery back here, one of the surgeons who had looked at me before I had the surgery was showing me the MRI on one of the light boards, like they use. And he said, now you've had 5 low back surgeries. I said, right. And he said, you've had 1 neck surgery frontal. And I said, right. And he said, well, whoever did this on the back, from the backside on these levels, just did a spectacular job. He said, it's marvelous, whoever did this. And that's when you'll be the first to go in that way. And he looked at me and he thought I was joking, and he pointed back and he said, no, look right here. Somebody has done surgery on you, and whoever it was did a fantastic job. So I said, well, nobody's gone in that way. And he turned me around. He was smiling like I was joking with him. And when I turned back around, he wasn't smiling because there was no incision there. So I took the film out to him Thursday. I was going to try to get it back here, so you could get a copy or at least see it. And he's going to put bracket marks on it where that surgery had been performed on my neck back here before I had ever had a scar. And I know this has happened to a lot of people with nasal surgery. One fellow said that the reason you can't tell that they've been in there or done anything is because somehow they outline your whole nose and pull your nose away and go in and do the surgery that way and then put your nose back in place right where it's supposed to be. So, it could be done that way because it's hard to go up through a nostril and see what the heck you're doing. But if you had that whole opening there to work on, that would be real easy.
The tape is about over.
Okay, how much?
It's just that the scratching sound that's picked up on the mic.
Okay, I'll try to remember that.
It's about only 1 minute on this tape.
Okay, let's stop. Yeah, why don't we switch? Because I just want.